Hello everyone, so I'm here today to do my February wrap-up. These are all the books that I read in the month of February. Usually I would combine this with my to-be-read for the next month, so I would tell you what books I'm planning on reading in March. But as I'm about to start the university semester, I've decided to give myself a little bit of a break and not predict which books that I'm going to pick up over the next month. I'm not really sure what my workload's going to look like this semester, and I kind of just want to leave myself some freedom to pick whatever I feel like reading at the time. So if that's okay with you, I will do a wrap up at the end of the month so you can see what I've been reading. I also link down below my Goodreads page if you want to keep up in real time. The first book that I finished in the month of February was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I picked this up in January but actually finished it in February. This follows a group of college kids at a university in Vermont. They commit some really heinous crimes and it's kind of about them trying to cover them up. I found this very, very entertaining. I think there are definitely parts of it that make it clear that this is Donna Tartt's debut novel, things like repetition and use of pretty expected tropes, but otherwise, I just thought this was a really enjoyable read and I would highly recommend it to anyone. It is a pretty popular novel. It's remained on the best-selling list or is a pretty frequent bestseller and has been since it was published, I think like 20 years ago, something ridiculous. Very good novel. I would recommend. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I picked up a book that I no longer have the physical copy of. This is I Saw, an Autobiography by Norman Lewis. Norman Lewis was a travel writer popular in the 80s and 90s, kind of, and this is basically just his autobiography. I've owned it for about 6 years and finally decided to pick it up in February. I found it exceptionally boring. Almost excruciatingly boring, and I finished it eventually, gave it 1 out of 5 stars, and then promptly gave it away. So would not recommend, didn't enjoy that one. Next, I picked up another really popular novel. This is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Emily St. John Mandel is a writer for The Millions, which is a literary magazine online, so she's pretty well known, and this was her debut novel as far as I know. It follows a ton of actors as they travel around a post-apocalyptic America after a plague, I guess, knocks out most of the world. I expected to really like this because I'm a big theater nerd and I thought it would be really cool to read about actors. And I just kind of felt it was a bit of a letdown. Not a lot happened. I didn't find it all that exciting. I don't know, it was okay. I mean, I read it, but I really didn't like it all that much. I gave this one 2 out of 5 stars. Next, I picked up a total and complete sci-fi classic. This is Dune by Frank Herbert. Pretty much anyone who's ever read sci-fi has read or at least knows very much about this book, and it is one of those books that's transcended its genre, and a lot of people who don't read a lot of sci-fi have also read this book. I picked it up because it's a classic and I thought I may as well give it a shot. I don't read a lot of sci-fi, but I have enjoyed it in the past. And I hated this. I thought this was absolutely awful. I was not interested in the world or the characters. I found it very archaic and boring. I so disliked this book. I found a few parts of it really thrilling, but mostly I just kept thinking the clunky writing is really dragging this down and I'm not connecting with anyone in this world or anything about this world. I don't really know why I'm reading this. I definitely won't be picking up any more of the Dune books or anything by Frank Herbert. Thoroughly disappointed in this book. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. Next, I picked up a very hyped book here on YouTube. This is Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. This is a graphic novel / comic book bind-up based on a online comic that Noelle Stevenson wrote. Basically, it follows a supervillain one day when a young girl appears in his home and demands to be his sidekick, except Nimona isn't really all she makes herself out to be. I thought it was pretty cute and I really enjoyed the illustrations, but it wasn't a standout for me. I didn't think the story was all that thrilling for me, and I thought Basically, the pacing was really off. I thought not much happened in the first half and then everything happened in the second half. And I would have really preferred that to have been paced out a little bit better. So I thought that really stood out to me while I was reading it. So I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I finished in the month of February was The Little Red Writing Book by Mark Tredinnick. This is basically a grammarian's how-to on how to write well, I guess is how you would say it. I pick up books like this because I am a writer and I'm interested in writing, and I like knowing what other people have to say. People who've been writing much longer than me and the advice that they would give to me. This book was pretty boring, mostly because I'm also a linguistics student. This goes into pretty intense detail about sentence structure, and that's something that I study at university and have known for a few years now. So I found that really repetitive just for my life personally, and didn't really enjoy the way he was explaining it to me. There were a few things that stood out that I enjoyed, but all in all, I think this is the type of book for someone who doesn't write fiction or poetry, but for someone who writes like a lot of reports in a corporate sphere, or maybe a teacher or someone like that, because it was definitely more of like everyday type of writing and how to improve that and make that more interesting rather than writing fiction and things like that. So I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. Next, I picked up a collection of poetry. This is The Mooring of Starting Out, the first 5 books of poetry by John Ashbery. John Ashbery is one of my favorite poets. He was famous, I think, in the 60s and 70s mostly. He's an American poet, and I just absolutely love the way that he uses language. What's particular about John Ashbery is he writes a lot of sci-fi and kind of like otherworldly poems, but he does it in a really interesting way. So if you read a lot of sci-fi, when people talk about something that doesn't exist in our world, you have to have a very specific setup of how that character is going to tell the audience about these things. Either they're going to be seeing it for the first time as well as you, or there needs to be a really subtle way of telling the audience what it is. Otherwise it stands out like a sore thumb as like a new thing that shouldn't be new for the narrator, but has to be new for the narrator so the audience can figure out what it is. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But basically John Ashbery completely negates that rule of thumb and just says things and just names things and doesn't explain what they are. So you just have to kind of guess from context what character or thing or scene that he's talking about that he's just completely made up and is unrealistic. I just really like him. I think he's a really good poet. I'm not very far into the book at all, but I'm kind of pacing myself through it, and I'm really enjoying it. I think John Ashbery is great. And I also picked up in the month of February The Eyre Affair by Jasper Fforde. I've had this on my to-be-read list for many, many years and have finally gotten to it. I'm absolutely loving it. I think it is so well written. I'm thoroughly enjoying the plot, and I'm nearly done with it. I'm planning on finishing it today, hopefully. Basically, this follows the literary detective Thursday Next as she hunts down a, I guess, serial killer slash supervillain as he begins to steal people out of books and murder them, so ruin the series, that kind of thing like that. It's got a lot of literary references in it. It's basically a world that looks like the everyday, but is completely obsessed with literature. I'm just really enjoying it because I love literature as well. I love the references. I love the school of thought. I'm thoroughly enjoying it, so much more than I thought I would, and would highly recommend it. So there you go. Those are all the books that I picked up or finished in the month of February. Please let me know what you thought of any of them if you've also read them in the past. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.